Why do most leaders run from conflict? Why, when they know they have to handle a conflict, do they avoid it? There are two types of conflict. I'm sure we could debate this all over, but there are two types of conflict. One is reactive and one is proactive. We say things like, I understand, I see your point, I hear what you're saying, but we do that at the very beginning when we haven't heard their point. We really might not understand their situation. How do you handle your emotions? If somebody brings fire, do you bring gasoline? Right? Do you shut down? Do you begin to get emotional? Do you get all red and blotchy? Do you begin to cry? That can help create a positive path forward and not necessarily add more destruction and more conflict based on the situation. What do you do when conflict arises? What happens when one of your team members or a peer or even your boss comes at you hot? What do you do when you know you have to address a situation that isn't necessarily pleasant to address and conflict is present? I will tell you, many leaders freeze up. Many leaders do not have the confidence and competence to really handle situations that create a productive process forward versus creating more headwinds and challenges, and that's why they typically avoid it. Conflict comes down to two things. There's really reactive, when somebody comes at you, how do you deal with that? And proactive. And we're gonna discuss both of those in this video and hopefully give you some tips and tools that will create more confidence in you when handling conflict. I'm Chad Carden, founder of the Carden Group, and for the past 2.5 decades, I've been helping leaders across the globe handle conflict and handle conflict in a way that allows them to move situations forward in a productive and positive manner. Today, we are going to give you insights and tools from the Carden Group playbook that can help you set yourself up for a higher probability of success when it comes to handling conflict. Let's dive into it. It comes down to this: if you can't handle conflict, you can't lead. So how can you build the skill set when it comes to conflict that allows you to lean into it, not typically shy away from it? Leaders that are really good at handling conflict, there's a couple things that really elevate in their brand, in the way that they show up. Number one, they come across more confident. Number two, they earn more respect because most people just don't know how to handle conflict. And so ultimately, when somebody can handle it, their respect level goes up and people lean on them in situations that they can lead them through that sets them up for a higher probability of success. You build better teams. Your teams get better and you strengthen the team because they know when conflict arises, it's okay. There's somebody that's gonna help them lead through. And ultimately, you create that comfort that allows you to show up in any situation with any person and the ability to say the right things at the right time that creates encouragement, not discouragement in whatever situation you're dealing with when it comes to conflict. It will also allow you to control the room and control the outcome. When you can handle conflict in a way that's very productive, it allows you to lead people through the situation that sets them up for a higher probability of success on the other end of this thing. Another thing it does is really less drama, more productivity. It minimizes the risk of more frustration, more sidebar conversations, more drama because you are more comfortable with conflict and people are more comfortable bringing conflict to you because they know that you're gonna lead them through it. Another thing that it does is it actually turns conflict into growth. There's always an opportunity somewhere in this conflict to create productive growth that moves things in a positive direction. It actually helps you become not just a firefighter, but a fire preventer. By handling conflict, you're able to put out fires that will not repeat themselves moving forward, that creates more efficiency, more effectiveness, and better results. Again, there are two types of conflict. I'm sure we could debate this all over, but there are two types of conflict. One is reactive and one is proactive. Let me walk you through the reactive. The reactive means when somebody shows up and they're hot, they're heated, they're emotionally charged. Maybe they're upset about something that you did. Maybe they're just upset about something that they have to do on their plate. Maybe they're ready to leave the organization. I don't know where their stress level is, but it catches you off guard. And so one of the first things you want to do when you look at the tools that we provide for leaders, one of the first things that we give them is what we call the de-escalation process. Let me walk you through the de-escalation process so you can better understand this. The goal of the de-escalation process is really three things. One, to dissipate or lower emotion, to get somebody to a point where they're willing to have a productive conversation. Two, to really understand the situation. A lot of times as human beings, our initial gut reaction is, if it's broke, let's fix it. But if we don't really understand the situation, we can actually add fuel to the fire and not dissipate that emotion. And 3, find a productive and viable solution that allows us to move forward in a productive way and leaves the person encouraged, not discouraged. That doesn't mean that we're not going to give them things that they might not want to hear or provide solutions that might not necessarily be the solutions that they want. It just means, how do we leave them encouraged? By dissipating the emotion, truly understanding it, and finding a solution that allows us to move forward. Let me walk you through the process. So when somebody comes at you, the first thing you want to do, the very first thing you want to do is you want to clarify and listen. Have you ever been in a situation where you were hot, you were heated, and you just needed somebody to listen? You didn't want anybody to solve anything, but you needed somebody to listen. And after you were able to vent, right? Maybe you just felt better. I know I've been in that situation many times. I didn't want anybody to solve anything. I just needed to vent for a minute. And after you vented, you automatically thought to yourself one of 2 things. All right, I feel better about that situation, or even the situation solves itself, right? I've been in situations where somebody's allowed me to vent and I'm like, okay, that's kind of stupid. I shouldn't have been so mad about that anyway. A lot of times when we just let somebody vent or we clarify and listen to the situation, it automatically dissipates that emotion. And it also helps us understand where they are coming from. You can clarify and listen by putting the microphone back in their hands. So somebody comes at you heated, they're upset, they're emotionally charged. You can say things like, tell me more. Help me understand. Please explain. And it puts the microphone back in their hands and allows them to kind of double click on their frustration or double click on their thought. That gives you more details and allows them to sort of get it out. The next one, after we clarify and listen, we want to restate and cushion. Restating and cushion is not parroting back or not just word for word vomiting back on what it is they said. It's almost like I want to take what I heard, rephrase it, and give it back to them. And at that point, if they agree with what I've said or my synopsis of their frustration, now I want to cushion it. A lot of times we cushion in the beginning and we haven't earned the right, which again could add to the emotion, not take away from the emotion. We say things like, I understand. I see your point. I hear what you're saying. But we do that at the very beginning when we haven't heard their point. We really might not understand their situation. And so we do that because we want to try to put a cushion in, but a lot of times we put a cushion in at the wrong spot. So again, after we clarify and listen, hear what they're really upset about, what they're frustrated about, dissipating that emotion, we restate it. So here's what you're saying. Here's what I understand about the situation. Now we've earned the right to cushion. I understand. I see your point. That makes sense. Cushions are typically a neutral statement. We don't want to agree or disagree. We just want to get on the same side with them. We don't want to feel like we're on opposite sides of the table fighting against each other. We want to be able to walk with them and really get them to understand that we know where they're coming from. Now, research shows that 68% of the time, when somebody gives us their first reason why they're upset, it's not the real reason. And so the next part of the de-escalation process is vital if we're going to get to the heart of the issue. And that is drawing out any additional concerns. 2 words we always use there, it's called anything else. Is there anything else that might be bugging you? Is there anything else that's causing you frustration? And if we find another reason, then we go right back to clarify and listen. And then we go through the process again. We restate and we take it one situation, one issue at a time. And we ask the anything else question until they say no, that's it. This is about finding the big X. This is about getting the heart of the issue. Think about situations. I've been in situations before where I might have been upset about 2 or 3 things and somebody didn't really get to the heart of the issue, but they spent all their time solving the little issue. The big issue was still present. I've also been in situations where somebody did find, spend a little bit of time with me, found that big X, and once they helped me solve the big X, the other little X's just kind of dissipated in emotion. So ultimately, we want to draw out anything else. After they say no, now let's say they have 3 concerns, 2 or 3 concerns. Now we want to isolate the primary concern. So what's really causing the frustration? What's really at the heart of it? It's like peeling an onion. There's a lot of layers to the onion, but what's the real core? What's the heart of the issue? After we find that out, now we can respond, we can discuss, we can talk about solutions, and we can talk about next steps. This process has saved me multiple times in my life. I remember early on in my career, I used to travel all the time. I don't travel near as much as I used to travel, but I used to travel all the time. I was on the road 250 to 300 days a year. And when Sarah and I first got married, she would pick me up. She would drop me off at the airport on Sundays, pick me up at the airport on Fridays. And what I found was, as I would get in the car on a Friday, she doesn't do that anymore. She doesn't pick me up all the time. I have to find my own ride home. But when she used to do that early on in our marriage, I would get in the car and I would say, honey, how was your week? And she would just want to maybe blow off some steam. She would say, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. And I would immediately start solving. I would say, well, why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you do this? And I didn't realize it, but I was adding more frustration to her, and we really weren't having good weekends. My dad's a big mentor of mine. And so I asked him, I said, Dad, here's the situation. Here's what I'm dealing with. Any thoughts or remedies on how to, solve this thing? And he just simply threw it back on me. He said, well, why don't you use some of the tools that you teach other people to use? Which I thought was a little bit of a dig, but he's right. He said, why don't you just allow her to talk? Why don't you just allow her to vent? Why don't you just maybe listen a little bit? So literally that next Friday, no joke, that next Friday I got in the car and I just sat down and I said, honey, how was your week? And she would start venting. She would say, well, this happened. And I would say, tell me more. Right? And I would just listen. I didn't have to solve anything. And it was amazing how the dynamics of the weekend changed just from using this process to allow somebody to vent, allow them to dissipate the emotion, and completely change the environment. So next time you have a situation where somebody comes at you, next time somebody comes at you heated, instead of trying to solve it, just take a step back and just put the microphone back in their hands. Clarify and listen, restate and cushion, draw out, find that primary concern, discuss that concern, and see if that doesn't add value and benefit to your relationship and move things in a productive manner. So that's the reactive process. Now let's talk about the proactive process. Why do most leaders run from conflict? Why, when they know they have to handle a conflict, do they avoid it? Well, my belief and my experience is it comes down to lack of confidence, lack of knowing how. I might have the confidence, but I just don't know how to approach it in a productive manner. Or I have a belief system that I think nothing I do will matter, that person will just shut me down. And so I just avoid it, hoping it will go away. What you find is conflict rarely just kind of goes away and dissipates. You have to at some point take it on. And the more time you allow conflict to be present, the bigger the issues get. So let's stop that for you. Let's stop that for you as a leader and talk about a formula that when you have to handle conflict, you can do it in a way with confidence, comfort, and competence. Now, the formula I'm going to give you is a planning tool. It's an opportunity to set yourself up for the highest probability of success when you're dealing with conflict. Remember, this is proactive. You know you have to handle it. You have to address a situation. You have to talk to somebody. Let's dive into this formula. So the first piece of this formula is to really begin to plan and prep who's involved in this situation? What's their style? How might they react? What are things that I can do in advance to create comfort for them? For some people, you just have to immediately on the spot handle that situation. Don't give them any forewarning that you're going to talk about it. For other people, they might need time to process. And so I might want to give them a heads up. I might want to give them a little bit of an opportunity to kind of create their foundation around the situation and talk about their talking points before we just dive right into it. So I have to think about the who. That's the first thing. The second thing I really want to think about is the purpose. What's the purpose of this conversation, and why are we having the conversation? Have I as a leader been avoiding it? Did it just show up? Has it been around for years? What's the true purpose, and why do I want to have this conversation and or this dialogue? The next piece is the goals. Now, goals are different than purpose. The goals are what are the outcomes that I want to achieve based on having this conversation. Those might be we want to end the conflict. Those might be we want to agree to disagree. Those might be we want to find ways to work better together. That might be we just want to open up additional lines of communication. Whatever those goals are, I want to make sure that I'm clear on those goals and that I state those goals when I'm approaching this conversation. The next is the rationale. The rationale is really the facts. And when you're thinking about the rationale, leave your opinions out of it. Leave the statements like, here's why I think that's happening, or here's what I think you need to do. This is just more of the foundation of why the conflict is present. So it's about the facts, not our opinions, because with facts, people can't disagree. For example, a lot of conflict arises in organizations that we deal with today where people might be late to work. People aren't living into their expectations or driving the results that they're asked to drive in the seat that they sit in. Those are facts. If I'm addressing somebody with maybe their tardiness or not showing up to work, I want to stick to the facts. Here are the facts. And I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just laying the facts out as they are. In the past month, you have been late to work 4 times. That's a fact. I'm not trying to set up a precedent. I'm just laying out the facts. Here are the facts. Here are the things that you have to hit in your role. Here are the measurements that we measure. And in the past quarter, you have not fulfilled those metrics. You've come in below. Those are just facts. We can disagree on why. We can talk about the excuses or the real reasons why that thing takes place, but those are the facts. So that's the rationale. That's the next step. After you think about the rationale, you have to think about ideas. Ideas could come from 2 different ways in this conversation. One, I could come to the table with some ideas and remedies and ways to fix this and move this in a more productive way moving forward. Or B, I might come with some questions that I can ask that I believe the other person or the group of people that I'm dealing with might have some answers to help fix this conflict, remove this conflict. We're making sure this conflict isn't present as we move forward. So that's the ideas section. The next one is the actions. I want to think about what are the actions that need to happen to make sure this doesn't stay present or continue to arise. And when I think about actions, I want to think about who does what by when. Those are the main things of the actions, because if we don't have who does what by when, now we might have different expectations on what happens after I have this conversation or after we have this engagement. So I really want to think about the actions. And again, those actions can come up organically in the conversation, but when I'm planning and prepping, I might want to have a few in my back pocket that I will pull out in case we might not get to that in the real conversation. The last couple pieces are vital to the productivity of this conversation or this particular engagement. I want to think about their reactions. How are they going to react? And what's my response strategy? That's probably the main driving factor. Some people, when you bring conflict to them, they might shut down. Some people might get charged and all of a sudden get really defensive. Some might start crying. Some might begin to provide excuses. You probably know your people better. You know the people that you're going to engage with. Those are things that I want to think through, but more importantly, how am I going to respond? Because nobody knows you better than you. And sometimes when you're stressed or a conflict happens, how do you handle your emotions? If somebody brings fire, do you bring gasoline? Right? Do you shut down? Do you begin to get emotional? Do you get all red and blotchy? Do you begin to cry? What are those things that you can do to manage your emotions that can help create a positive path forward and not necessarily add more destruction and more conflict based on the situation? So if you have issues or you avoid or have been avoiding difficult conversations, check out my Design Leader digital course. We have worksheets and more in-depth information that can set yourself up for success. I'll put the link in the description below. So at the end of the day, conflict shouldn't be your enemy. Conflict happens all the time. We all handle conflict. The question is how are we going to move forward or allow it to be a headwind for us as we progress in our leadership journey, as we progress in building a team that drives even better results. I can tell you, I've been on both sides of this fence. I have been on the side of the fence where I didn't necessarily approach conflict, and it lingered and it actually grew. And my good buddy Adam Carroll talks about eventually you're pole vaulting over mouse turds, right? Eventually you take these little things that should have been little and you're able to handle in the beginning of it, but because you let them fester and because you kind of walked around them and danced around them, they grew and grew and grew. And next thing you know, you have this big issue. Matter of fact, one of the challenges was I was working with a client and they wanted to fire a cook. They had a chain of restaurants and they wanted to fire a cook. I'll never forget this. And so it was a husband and wife, and they own this chain of restaurants. And the husband called me and said, Chad, I need your help. I'm willing to pay you. I need you to advise me on this. I want to fire this cook, but this cook is not stable. This cook could potentially, come back with a gun, come back with a knife. He has a history or a track record of violence, and so I don't know how to do it in a productive way. I literally had 3 sessions with this guy, and we talked about all the things that we could do. Should he have the cops present? I mean, we went through every scenario, and he said, I'm going to do it Monday morning. We worked 3 different times. We had 3 different sessions that week prior. He said, I'm going to do it Monday morning. He's going to be working Monday morning. I'm going to do it Monday morning. So I was waiting around on that Monday, and then about 11 o'clock, I couldn't take anymore. So I texted him and I go, hey, what's going on with this conversation? And he texted me back and he said, oh, he was let go last night and everything's fine. And I said, well, hang on, we're going to do it. So I had to call him. I said, hey, Neil, we're going to do this Monday morning. What the hell happened? He said, well, Donna was with him in the store last night as they were closing. And Donna said, I don't remember the guy's name, but I'll just use Bob, for example. She said, hey, Bob, we've been wanting to talk about you. You're fired. He said, okay. And he walked out, right? Like sometimes we make up all this thing around conflict when it's not that big of a deal. So ultimately, conflict isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's your best friend. I've also used this where I've had major conflict and it was a real issue. And I've used this formula that just literally 20 minutes of planning can create 20 years of a productive relationship. And if we don't do that, sometimes it creates more roadblocks. So when it comes to conflict, ultimately, those 2 roads, reactive and proactive. Commit to getting better at both. Committing to making conflict your friend, not your enemy, and see if that doesn't set yourself up for a higher probability of success, more trust, stronger teams, less drama, and ultimately a brand that helps you succeed in the role that you're in. If this message resonated with you, watch my next video on how to manage the expectation gap at work. Click the link below.